There's things that we know about our society, and we see them in the news every single day. So I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not here to talk to you about rape and gang rape and domestic violence. I'm not here to talk to you about female feticide, infanticide, and sex trafficking. I'm not going to be talking about acid attacks, comments that politicians have made, safety applications, or the next best punishment. All of these topics have been hashed through to pieces already, and our problems remain. I'm going to talk to you about how we got here. You see, there was a time in our history when women and men were considered equal, when sexuality was not taboo, when morality prevailed and our social structures were in balance. There is little that we know about this time, but we know it existed. But the traditions that we follow are not from that time. The traditions that we follow came with the advent of agriculture, when the concept of property came into existence. You see, land, which was once a common good, suddenly began to be divided and owned and passed down from generation to generation. Soon, women's roles lost all role in society, and women too began to be divided and owned and controlled, so that one could ensure that it was his own progeny who would inherit his land. That was the birth of the patrilineal tradition. And that was the birth of all of the mindsets and traditions that we follow today. So when we talk about gender, and we say, it doesn't happen in my community, doesn't happen in my home, okay? It happens in rural areas, happens in slums, happens in North India, happens in the Middle East. But it doesn't happen in my home or my community. What we're refusing to do is we're failing to recognize a system of control and power that continues to manifest itself in every single community around the world. And in failing to do so, we fail to address it. It lives on the insides of our sacred traditions, on the insides of the people that we love and respect, and it sits on the sidelines of the institutions that we hold worthy. It is not a problem that is unique to India. Let's make that clear. But our problem is uniquely Indian. And we must look inward and not outward if we are to banish it from our communities. But we stand now at an unprecedented moment in our history. The chaos that you see around us, the violence, the protests, the politics, the media backlash, they're all symptomatic of a much deeper social revolution than we can perceive. Our social fabric is cracking and it's shaking and like an earthquake. And the new earth that comes up from between those cracks, the new India, is going to be more healed, more robust, more democratic, and more socially sustainable than we have ever seen before. The relations between man and woman in India have changed more in the last 10 years than in the last 3,000, Ira Trivedi. And it is the young, urban, middle class that is leading this change. So, how are we going to ride on this momentum and create a gender-equal India? It is only through individual actions taken in the context of communities and in social groups that will be able to drive this change for millions. There's two simple actions that every single one of us can take that will break our current paradigm and take us closer to a gender-equal India. Action number one. Imagine an alternative reality, believe in it, and act accordingly. Imagine, believe, act. I stay in Mumbai, and I was sitting in my flat one day, it was a normal Thursday night, when all of a sudden I hear this screaming coming from below my window. And all of a sudden, I sprint out of my apartment and down the stairs, and I find a young woman about the same age as me, and she's bleeding out of her mouth, and she's in complete shock, and somehow she's made it into the building, but she's crying hysterically, and she can't even respond to me. And so I follow her up the stairs, and I make sure that she gets into her apartment okay, and I go home, and I go to bed. A few weeks later, I get a phone call, and it's her mother, and she says, "Thank you. A boy she knew came in, punched her in the nose, broke it, and she was in complete shock. And you were the only one who came down to see if you could help." What instigated me to act in that moment? Why did I run downstairs? I thought about it. And I realized that I believe in a future reality where everybody is an activated bystander. I honestly, truly believe in this. And so when the situation arose, I naturally ran downstairs. And then I realized that every single human being has a set of subconscious realities that shape the actions that we take day to day. And in a perfect loop then, the actions that we take bring us closer to manifesting those realities. The problem is, though, that largely our realities are driven by fear and hopelessness. Realities like, India will never change. I can't do anything to affect gender equality. And so it's no surprise then that our actions every day bring us one step closer to a fearful and a hopeless world. It's simple. But what if we dared to confront the facts that India is changing in front of our eyes? Every statistic shows it. That we play an integral role to gender equality. It's obvious. What if we dared to imagine an alternative reality for gender in India? Then naturally, every action that sprung forth would bring us closer to manifesting that reality. I want everybody to close your eyes right now. Everyone, close your eyes. Imagine, believe, act. Imagine, believe, act. You are in any Indian metropolis, and you step outside and you go out onto the street, and 50% of the people you see on the street are female. There's a group of maids laughing raucously on the street corner. There's a group of little girls playing a fierce game of cricket in the alleyway. There is a young man stepping out of a rickshaw and paying his female rickshaw driver, while a group of young boys squat and watch passerbys on the side of the street, but sitting next to them are their female companions who are doing the same. Oh, I forgot to mention, it's 10 o'clock at night. Now open your eyes. How does that world feel? Does it feel different? Safer, perhaps? Friendlier? Our community at Badal Ja in Mumbai attempted to recreate this reality at a micro scale. We brought together young men and women, and we went for a walk at midnight in different parts of Mumbai. We took up space, we loitered, we interacted with people along the way. And at the end, we all came up with micro actions, or small steps as we call them, that we think would bring us closer to manifesting this vision. Having lived this vision for a couple of hours, the results were stunning. One woman vowed to expand and take up space to loiter on street corners and at chai stalls because she believed in a world where 50% of the people on the street were women. And the young men, they realized that they were to be the leaders of this movement, and they committed themselves to educating young boys using words, not violence, on what masculinity really means. The meaning of masculinity has gotten completely twisted and perverted, and it's up to the young men of this nation to set that straight. So similarly, I dare you all. Will you imagine, believe, and act? Will you reconstruct the realities that you hold in your brain, reconstruct them to be more hopeful, and envision a gender-equal India, and then let the action spring forth from that vision? Let the possibilities of the future unfold through you. Now, I want to go on to the second very simple step that every single one of us can take in order to create a gender-equal India. Taboos. Taboos are the things that we cannot say in a vicious cycle of fear, embarrassment, and shame. Taboos are those things that are socially unacceptable to speak of. Whether you're a man or you're a woman, taboos are our shackles. Break them. Let me tell you a story about menstruation. So when I was young, sometimes I'd have very painful periods where all of a sudden I have to lay on the floor and fight to stay conscious, and my hands and feet would go numb, and sometimes I'd throw up, and I'd just have to bear the pain and wait for it to pass. And once when I was in high school, I was standing on stage rehearsing for my high school play, and I got such an attack. And I tried to act normal, like nothing was happening, and I felt the pain and the cramps starting, and I stood there, and I tried to act normal, and then all of a sudden, I had fainted flat on the stage in front of 30 of my classmates and my teacher. I regained consciousness a few seconds, maybe a minute later, but it was scary. But what's scarier is that I preferred to lose consciousness rather than to draw attention to the fact that I was on my period. In India, 80% of women have no idea what's happening to them every month when they menstruate. They're simply told, don't touch that food, you'll poison it. Don't pray, ghosts will come. Don't touch that tulsi plant, you will kill it. If you're a 12-year-old girl, that's enough to make you feel cursed. So I thought that I would start a menstrual education program. And I went into a school in Dharavi in Mumbai to talk to 6th to 8th standard girls. And don't get me wrong, I was completely petrified and it was going to be really awkward. But I was convinced to test my theory that if I walked into a classroom without any shame, that is shamelessly, then they too could break their shackles. So I went in there and I started talking about the menstrual cycle, and some of the girls giggled, and most of them just stared at me like this. And I started explaining the cycle to them. I said, menstruation is completely normal, it's clean, it's food for your unborn baby, it's nutritious even. In ancient times, women were thought to be able to access deeper levels of consciousness during their menstrual cycles, and they would voluntarily isolate themselves to access visions and insights during those days of rest and bring them back to their communities and tell them where to go hunt. And in an hour and a half, something really amazing started to happen. These preteen Dharmi girls were having a lively discussion about the taboos they face inside the home. And they said, but if Mata Devi is a woman, then why doesn't she menstruate? But if mothers have periods too, na, and they can touch the babies, na? But when I'm not on my period, I can play with boys. But when I'm on my period, I can't play with boys. Why? I didn't answer their questions. That was never the point. I had arrived to destroy the taboo, and these little girls would now drive their own empowerment. So 3 months later, I go back to that school, and I'm standing in a busy courtyard, and one of those little girls comes up and runs up to me, and she said, Didi, Didi, what are you talking about today? And I look at her, and I say, I'm talking about the same thing we talked about last time, except to the boys. And she says, oh, menstruation? And then another little girl comes, she runs up to me. She says, Didi, Didi, what are you talking about? Periods again? So, why break taboos? Whether it's periods, or sexuality, or homosexuality, or failed marriages, or being born male and needing to cry sometimes. When we break out of our taboos, we break out of our shame, and we share our experiences, and we become the full and powerful beings we were always meant to be. You see, unless we break taboos, unless we break taboos, we can't have dialogue. And unless we have dialogue, we can't have progress. Taboos are your shackles, break them. You'll see when you start to break your taboos, the people around you are going to be uncomfortable. And it's going to be a little awkward, but you'll see that if you let your light shine, you'll inspire them to break their shackles as well. And so it goes. And so, today, I'm asking every single one of you to step a slightly outside your comfort zone and act through your imaginations. Imagine, believe, and act. I'm asking you, just like those little girls who confronted their taboos in Dharavi, or those young men who found themselves as leaders after the walk, to see if you can start questioning. Okay, question your mother who seeks a fair-skinned groom for your sister. Question. Ask a group of guys to come to you to the latest Bollywood flick with a strong female lead. Break those taboos that constrain your dignity and expression, whatever they may be for you. Taboos are your shackles, break them. And support those who are trying to speak up and break their own taboos. Today, I pass my baton on to all of you, so you may drive change within yourselves and your communities, because looking inward is the only way to manifest the outward. And so I ask you now to imagine your alternative realities, to believe in them, and to act on them, and to fearlessly break taboos as you pave the way to a gender-equal India. Thank you.